St Andrew's Church in Chale, amazing little church, founded in 1114. You can tell from the style of the church, especially if you look at the structure of the roof and things and the main aisles and stuff. It's absolutely wonderful. Yes, that's been restored, but they've kept it back to its original form of glory. What's nice in this church straight away, which I've only just noticed actually, which I'm going to have a look at shortly, is we've got a plan of the churchyard, so someone's painstakingly marked all the graves on there, which is wonderful, and then they've got the book here to reference to, so you can find your ancestors if you do so wish. Which is lovely. Lavender. Now, lavender's always quite interesting. You don't normally have it in a church, but lavender's quite common on the island, and it's always been marked as a spiritual flower, so I guess that's why they have it here in particular. The fallen men of the Great War of 1914-1919, as we see in most churches. Now, in particular, what I do enjoy, which sadly you can't really see past the modern candelabra, but we do have the Flower of Life here, which is quite interesting, and we have that set within the mix of trison, what we call a mix of trison, T-R-I-S-O-N. So it's a trison, and we have the Flower of Life in the trison, which is quite nice. So probably a word that most people wouldn't be familiar with, apart from in inner circles. And you've got one at the top as well, which I thought was quite interesting as well. So there's two trisons on there, which is quite nice to see first of all. Church itself has a nice feel about it. A little cold, obviously, at the time of year, early March. So when we carry on through, obviously we're still to sign the guest book at some point. We'll just follow around here. So we can see the structure. We can see how old the actual church is. Obviously the floor has been replaced. That's relatively modern in certain times. Pulpit's rather interesting. Sort of quite a more modern bowl inside. I suppose it's personal preference. I mean, obviously years ago we'd fill up the water up to the water's edge, you know. But these days, I suppose a lot of the vicars, they tend to have it more practical in a smaller bowl that they can clean easy and remove afterwards for the pulpits. I did notice that already, which is quite nice. Lovely artwork, stained glass on the windows. Some very interesting things up there. Lovely colours of the reds and blues, all with the song disc behind. I find it quite interesting that we've got a serpent round the staff to the right, which I did quite, you could mistake that as a piece of rope, but it's meant to represent the serpent on the staff. So the serpent priesthood, that's what it's representing, but you could mistake it as rope because it looks like rope entwined, but it's meant to represent the serpent on the staff. Nice little reference here on the St Andrew's Church of the Isle, the list of rectors. As my learned friend already pointed out, we've got a Sinclair on there, and we've got a Neville Ward. And in the earlier days, we've got Constantine Sinclair, as we can see there. And then directly below, we've got in 1973 A.E. Neville Ward. So Neville would have been a lineage, but it would have been a sort of 6 or 7 times removed. The Ward is the surname of that particular rector, with a Neville link, which is why he's got it in his name. One thing that does stand out, it has been restored to the best as it can be, but again, this is wonderful. You don't normally see the solid metal marks of the shield. Slightly worn, we can see that they're trying to restore it as best they can. Certainly looks rather impressive to me. Just going around a bit further. I see the difference between the hands there. We've got one's got the hands clasped, the other's got the hands like this. Yet the Jesus is only using 2 of his fingers there, rather than the 3. So that's quite a different type of artwork there, in regards to the paintings and how they're portrayed. But rather interesting piece of work. Pulpit, quite suited for the church as well. interesting wooden carvings. Again, we have interesting that a lot of the churches do portray bishops and monks and things, and what's interesting about this one, you don't normally see it, and that's what really strikes out. Look at the female. Yeah, amongst all these men, there's a female lurks in at the behind, and you don't normally see a female carving on the actual, I call it a pulpit, on the wood itself. It's quite interesting to see that, really, to be fair. Again, if you can see from the structure, it's been obviously restored over the years, but it's got some very interesting structurally sound works there. You can see the original brickworks from the original 1114 build. You know, that's certainly the original 1114 build there. And you can see how they strengthened the brickwork coming up. So the arch here has been replaced since 1114. The original arch, as we can see, what's left of it in the replacement, you can see the original arch just above it. Little marking there, you see coming around the brickworks, and it suddenly stops where they've had to extend and put bits on, which is often a thing that they did. Coming through here, and again, this reminds me straight away, we can see the links between the Gaelic side now. If we just stop right where we are, we can see the Gaelic links now. We look up and we see exactly what we see in the Italian chapel on the Orkney Islands. The roofing, the structure. We've got certainly 2 of the Gaelic shields to each side. And most importantly, we have this. The Scottish mark, or the Gaelic mark. So that gives us a little, just turn that around to get a feel for it, that gives us a little bit of a insight at that level to see what's there. High altar's quite nice. When we come up here, we can see we've got the Lamb of God, we've got the 2 griffins, 3rd griffin, and then we go from 3 griffins and Lamb of God to, one can but assume or presume it's Michael, Metatron. So that's quite interesting as well to have that. So you've got a variation there when you look at it. Normally you get one of each sort of creature going across and perhaps a couple of human species in there, but on this one they've decided to have 3 griffins and then the one sort of human being trait. And the Lamb of God obviously is always there represented. We can see here that we've got these are beautiful. I mean, they're absolutely glorious, and they are not original of 1114. They're more of a 1700s, to be fair. So this would have been added in the 1700s. Wonderful piece of work. This is wood, this is metal, but wonderful carvings. There's 4 here. Now we know that 3 pillars represent wisdom, strength and beauty. When we apply a 4th pillar to the code, as we can see here we've got the 4, then we see wisdom, strength, beauty, and the 4th one being fidelity. Now you could argue that that all means the same anyway, because that is your fidelity, to have wisdom, strength, beauty. But fidelity is far more than that. It's about having a moral code, a series of beliefs that allow you to be a good person, an upright person. So we have the 4 pillars here, and all 4 angels, jinn, are exactly the same. They're identical. They've all peering round the candle there, so they're almost peering round the light, which is quite interesting. But are they the same? We say they're the same, but when we look at them closer, and that's what I want to bring your attention to detail. Okay, they're all slightly different. Okay, on their hand gestures. Oh, gives me a buzz just saying this. Okay, so they tell a story, which I won't share today, but we've got the hands here marked in that level. It's all the same apart from the hand movements. Yeah, to this one. See the difference? And then we come on to the other 2. They're all different. Yeah, all 4 of them are slightly different. That's the only variation, which is absolutely amazing to have that there. So anyone that knows what they're looking at will know exactly what that means, regards to its tails. Interesting that we've got the rose mark just under there. Again, most people have probably missed that. Lovely rose mark there. And then we've got this section here, which is quite interesting, that we have a subservient male and female to a female priestess. And if we see how her hands are held, they're held in a very different position, which is marking her stature. Yeah. And what she's actually doing is this. Just to show you that, that's the sign that she's using, which is a higher sign in Freemasonry. So it's quite interesting she's using that sign as that. So that's quite interesting as well. So there's a lot of different stories and tales that are being portrayed. As I always say, churches are like libraries. They certainly give you a lot of echoes of the past, both in the metaphysical and the physical realm. And certainly echoes of the future. These scribes, again, you don't always see scribes actually, but what particularly drew my attention to these particular scribes, normally it's angels and the Christ and various other things, but here we have a wonderful piece of artwork with two scribes. And this is what's most interesting to me. And anyone that knows their Enochian traditions will know that that is clearly Enochian by mode, by method and by mode, to use the phrase or to coin a phrase. So yeah, rather interesting symbology there as well. So there's certainly a lot of marks in here, as it were. As I said, the church 1114. So we're nearly looking at nearly 1,000 years old per se. Like most churches, they would have had something here before, and the ground would have been consecrated back in, say, in 1114. So, wonderful church at St Andrews, in the place of Chale on the Isle of Wight.